Lord, I am here. And the word here has never felt so heavy, so definitive. Here is a well, a dark well, with smooth, damp walls, and I am at the bottom. I no longer remember what sunlight is like. I look up, but I see no stars, no moon, no silhouette of the well's edge. The darkness is total, absolute, and the silence is filled only by the sound of my own anxious breathing and the echo of my thoughts, which ricochet off the walls and come back to haunt me. I tried to get out. Oh, how I tried. I spent days, months, perhaps years, scratching the walls with my fingernails until they bled. I tried to climb, using all my strength, all my intelligence, all my determination. Every small advance was followed by a slip that sent me back to the bottom, more bruised and more exhausted than before. I screamed for help until my throat was raw, but my voice doesn't seem to reach the surface. Or maybe it does, but there is no one out there to hear. The walls of this well are made of many things, Lord. For some, they are made of debt. Numbers that pile up, terrifying phone calls, the constant feeling of drowning in obligations that can never be met. For others, the walls are a medical diagnosis. Strange words spoken by a man in a white coat that have redrawn the entire map of the future, turning it into a territory of fear and uncertainty. For still others, the walls are a broken relationship, a marriage that has become a cell, a shared silence that is more painful than any scream, a love that has turned into a cold duty. They can be the wall of addiction, of depression, of grief, of professional failure, of the loneliness that crushes the soul. My walls are my own particular combination of these things. And they are high, they are insurmountable. And I have reached the point in my journey where my strength has been completely depleted. The fighting phase is over. The denial phase, where I pretended the well wasn't so deep, has also passed. Now I am in the phase of grim acceptance. The acceptance that I am trapped. That, by myself, I cannot get out. And what terrifies me most, Lord, is not the darkness. It is the loss of hope. Hope was my last tool. Even when I fell, I still had the hope that on the next try, I would succeed. Now the toolbox is empty. I look at the walls and I no longer see a challenge to be overcome. I see a sentence. I see my tomb. And my mind, my greatest asset, has become my worst enemy. It no longer looks for ways out. It dedicates itself to showing me with cruel clarity all the reasons why my situation is impossible. It shows me the bills and says, "You will never pay this." It shows me the future and says, "It will always be like this or worse." It shows me my past mistakes and says, "You deserve to be here. It's your fault." And I no longer have arguments to counter these voices. They seem logical. They seem realistic. Hope, on the other hand, begins to seem foolish, a childish fantasy. And when a man loses hope, what is left of him? Just a shell, a form that breathes, but has already given up on living. I feel profoundly alone. I know there are people out there on the surface. I vaguely remember what life is like under the sun. But the distance between my rock bottom and their normal life is so vast that it feels like we are on different planets. They talk about everyday problems, traffic, the weather, plans for the weekend, and I listen to them, and it's as if they are speaking a language I no longer understand. How can I worry about traffic when I am buried alive? How can I plan for the weekend when I don't know if I'll have the strength to get through today? I smile and nod, wearing my mask of everything is fine, I'm just a little tired, but inside, I feel the connection has been severed. No one can really come down here. No one can understand the crushing pressure of this darkness and the shame. The shame is the cold water that keeps rising inside the well. Shame for having failed. Shame for needing help. Shame for not being strong enough to solve my own problems. Society teaches us to be heroes, to be self-sufficient, and I am not. I am the opposite of that. I am weak, I am broken, and I am at the bottom of a well that I myself, in part, helped to dig. And this shame prevents me from screaming louder. It tells me to be quiet, to hide my situation, not to bother others with my misery. I have already tried everything the world teaches, Lord. I have read self-help books. I have made financial plans. I have sought advice from experts. I have tried to meditate. I have tried to practice positive thinking until my brain ached from the effort of pretending, and nothing. No rope came down from above. No ladder magically appeared. Each failed attempt only served to reinforce the thickness and height of the walls around me. Every well-intentioned piece of advice that didn't work only made me feel more inadequate and more hopeless. So, today, I give up. But it is a new kind of giving up. I am not giving up on life. I am giving up on trying to be my own savior. I am giving up the illusion that my strength, my intelligence, or my will can get me out of here. I admit my total and absolute bankruptcy. I am at zero. My hands are empty. My fingernails are broken. My spirit is exhausted. And it is from this place, from this 0 point, that I finally turn to you, without masks, without pretense, without trying to look like a good Christian with unshakable faith. I do not come to you with faith, Lord. My faith is in tatters. I come to you with nothing but my desperation. And my prayer is not a grand request. My mouth dares not ask you to lift me out of here in the blink of an eye. I dare not ask you to solve all my problems, for the walls to simply disappear. My request today is much smaller, much more humble, and yet it feels like the most impossible thing in the world. Lord, I see no way out. I look in every direction, and all I see is the impenetrable darkness of the walls that surround me. My mind cannot conceive of a solution. My heart cannot feel a drop of hope. I am completely blinded by my situation, and I am not asking you to show me the door. I am not asking you to show me the whole path. My request is simpler. Lord, even if I see no way out today, just show me one light, just one, a single light. It could be the light of a candle in the distance. It could be the light of a lone star through a crack I cannot see. It could be the faint glow of a match struck in the dark. I don't need the sun. I couldn't handle the sun right now. My eyes are unaccustomed. I just need one small source of light, no matter how small. Something to prove to me that the darkness is not absolute. Something to give me a point to look towards. Something to remind me that there is an outside to this well. Something to whisper to my spirit that I am not completely alone and abandoned here. I don't know how this light will come. Maybe it will be an unexpected word of encouragement from someone. Maybe it will be a small amount of money that appears when I need it most. Maybe it will be an idea that pops into my mind, an idea I hadn't had before. Maybe it will just be a feeling of peace that lasts for 5 seconds, but proves to me that peace still exists. I don't know. I have given up trying to guess. I am just here, in the dark, looking up, waiting for your light, the smallest one, because today a single spark would be enough to keep me alive until tomorrow. And then, after the plea, comes the hardest part, the silence, a silence that follows my cry. I asked for a light, and now I wait. And in this waiting, my soul fights a new battle, because my mind, accustomed to noise and action, cannot bear the stillness. The voice of cynicism, which is the voice of my fear disguised as intelligence, begins to whisper on the walls of the well. Fool, it says, do you really think a few words whispered in the dark will change anything? There is no one listening. The darkness is all there is. You are alone, and I almost believe it. The temptation to go back to scratching the walls, to go back to screaming with my own strength, is immense, because action, even if futile, gives me the illusion of control. Waiting, on the other hand, demands a virtue I barely possess, trust. And how do you trust when all the evidence around you points to helplessness? How do you have faith when your feelings scream that hope is a lie? It is here that my prayer deepens. It ceases to be just a request and becomes a confession of my own nature. Lord, I continue, now with a calmer voice, the voice of exhaustion that follows agony. I confess to you my addiction to control. I confess that even at the bottom of this well, a part of me still believes that I should be able to find the way out on my own. I confess my pride, my stubbornness, my faith in my own ability, which today has revealed itself to be dust. I realize that perhaps the darkness around me is so dense because I have spent my whole life with my eyes closed to any light that was not the one I generated myself. I wanted to be the sun of my own life, and now that my sun has burned out, I find myself in absolute darkness. So my request changes subtly. It becomes even more humble. Lord, maybe the light is already here, somewhere, and it is I who am blind to it. Maybe my definition of light and yours are different. I am looking for a spotlight, a fire escape, a spectacular rescue, and maybe your light is something much quieter, much more discreet. So, more than showing me a light, I ask, open my eyes. Give me eyes that can see in the dark. Give me a heart that can perceive your presence in the most unlikely details. And I begin to question my own definition of a way out. What if the way out is not outward, but inward? What if liberation is not the absence of the walls, but the discovery of peace within within them? What if your plan is not to take me out of the well right now, but to come down and sit with me in the darkness? This idea both terrifies and comforts me. It terrifies me because it means the suffering may not end soon. It comforts me because it means I would no longer have to suffer alone. And loneliness, I discover, is much worse than pain. So my prayer branches out. Father, if it is your will that I remain in this place for a while longer, please do not leave me here alone. Teach me to find you in the darkness. Teach me the lessons that can only be learned in this place. Transform this well of despair into a sanctuary of encounter with you. I remember my faith of old, a faith of sunny days, an easy, comfortable faith. I prayed with gratitude for blessings, asked for things, and often received them. I believed in a good God, a God who was like a generous father at a feast, but I never really needed him. Not like this. I never needed him to be my only source of light, my only reason to breathe. My faith had never been tested by fire, by pressure, by absolute darkness. And now, here at the bottom of the well, I wonder, was that faith real, or was it just convenient optimism? Everything I sang, everything I read, everything I declared, was it true, or was it just poetry for times of peace? My mind wanders to the stories I know. Joseph, thrown into the well by his brothers. Jonah, in the dark belly of the fish. Daniel, in the lion's den, surrounded by certain death. Jeremiah, in the muddy cistern. Paul and Silas, in the deepest dungeon. They all had been in their own wells. They all had been in places where there was no visible way out. What did they do? What did they feel? Did their faith waver? Did they feel this same desperation that I feel? And I realized that your history with humanity is a long history of encounters in the darkness. You are not only the God of the mountaintops, you are also the God of the deepest valleys. You are not only the midday light, you are also the morning star, which shines brightest in the darkest hour just before dawn. And this realization, though it does not change my situation, begins to change my perspective. I am not living an experience foreign to the history of faith. I am, in fact, entering its very heart. I am being invited into the kind of trust that is not based on seeing, but on believing. The trust that, even when I don't feel it, you are at work. Even when I don't see it, you are present. Even when all seems lost, your plan is still in motion. So I begin to redefine what I am looking for. What would this light I asked for be? Maybe it is not an event, but a state of mind. Maybe the light is a moment of clarity, an instant in which I understand a small part of my problem with a new perspective. Maybe the light is a sudden influx of strength, the energy I need to make that difficult call I've been putting off for weeks. Maybe the light is a wave of peace that washes over me for no apparent reason, a 5-minute ceasefire in the war that rages in my mind, just to remind me what peace feels like. Or maybe, and this idea moves me, your light almost always comes through other people. Maybe the light is the message from a friend who says, I was thinking of you today, without knowing how deep I am. Maybe it is the genuine smile of a supermarket cashier. Maybe it is a stranger who holds the door for me. Small gestures of humanity, of grace, that I, in my self-centered pain, have been ignoring. And I ask, Lord, forgive me for my blindness. Help me to see your face and your light in the people you place in my path every day. And so my waiting is transformed. It ceases to be a passive and anxious wait and becomes a vigil, an active and attentive vigil. I become an observer, a hunter of sparks. I begin to scan my darkness, no longer with fear, but with a holy curiosity. Where will you appear? How will your light manifest? My prayer becomes a silent mantra that accompanies me throughout the day. Show me your light. Open my eyes to your light. I am still in the well. The walls are still high. The darkness is still real, but my posture has changed. I am no longer facing away from the top, crying on the floor. I am standing, with my face turned upward, with my eyes wide open, examining every inch of darkness, because I have prayed a prayer. And I choose to believe, against all evidence of my senses, that the answer is on its way, and that however small it may be when it comes, it will be enough. It will be everything. And then, in the stillness of my vigil, in the midst of my attentive darkness, it came, the light. And it did not come as I had imagined. There was no choir of angels, no celestial vision, no thundering voice that shook the walls of my well. God's light came in the most humble, most unexpected, most discreet way possible. It came through the screen of my cell phone. I was there, in the gloom of my room, which was a reflection of the gloom of my soul. It was late at night. I was just existing, breathing, waiting, and the device vibrated. A notification. I ignored it. Probably another unimportant email. More news from a world that no longer seemed to be mine. But something made me pick up the device. A curiosity that was not my own, and I saw it. It was a message from a number I barely recognized. A colleague from an old job, someone I hadn't spoken to in years, someone who knew absolutely nothing about my current situation. The message was short, just a few lines. It said, "Hi, I know this message is completely random, and I apologize if I'm bothering you. But today, during the day, I suddenly thought of you, and I felt it in my heart very strongly that I should write to you and just say this: don't give up. Whatever your struggle is, don't give up. You are stronger than you think, and you are not alone." I read the message once, twice, 3 times. My first reaction was cynicism. A coincidence, just a strange coincidence. But then the memory of my prayer, my desperate cry, echoed in my mind. "Lord, just show me one light." And I looked at the phone screen, at those words from a near stranger, and the tears began to stream down my face. Hot tears that were not of sadness, but of a deep awe. That was it. That was the light. It was not the solution to my problems. It was not the ladder out of the well. It was something much more important. It was the proof that my prayer, whispered in the abyss, had been heard. The proof that the darkness was not absolute. The proof that I was not alone. God did not answer me directly. He used the mouth and fingers of another person miles away to send me his message. And the simplicity and improbability of that gesture made the miracle even greater. That little light did not bring down the walls around me, but it did something more powerful. It allowed me to see them differently. Total darkness paralyzes us because we cannot distinguish what is real from what is imaginary. But with that little light, I could see, for the first time, that although the walls were high, they were made of stone, not shadows. And on a stone wall, no matter how smooth, there is always a small crack, a small ledge, a place to get a foothold. The light did not take me out of the well. It showed me the first step, and the impact of that light cascaded. It broke, first of all, the wall of my loneliness. I was no longer talking to myself. There was someone on the other end of the line, and that certainty changed my internal monologue. The voice of despair, which previously screamed without opposition, now had a counterpoint. When the voice said, "No one cares," a new, calmer voice could reply, "That's not true." Today, God moved someone's heart to tell me that he cares, and that small rebuttal was a shield. Secondly, the light gave me a spark of energy, not the strength to climb the whole wall, but the strength to take a single step. There was a task that had terrified me for months, a call I needed to make, to face one of my biggest problems head on. I had been putting it off, paralyzed by the fear of what I might hear. But holding the light of that message in my soul, I picked up the phone. My heart was pounding. My hands were sweating. But my prayer was different. It was no longer, "Lord, solve this for me." It was, "Lord, this is my part. This is my first step towards the light you showed me. Please go with me. Be in my words. Be in my hearing. Give me the grace to accept the outcome, whatever it may be." And I made the call, and it was hard. It was uncomfortable. The answer I heard was not the magic solution I had dreamed of, but the miracle was not in the answer I received. The miracle was in the fact that I made the call. The miracle was in the fact that after hanging up, I did not feel the despair of before. I felt a strange calm, the calm of one who has finally stopped running and has faced the monster, and discovered that, although the monster was big, it was not invincible. The paralysis had been broken. I had acted, and I understood that faith was not waiting for God to do everything, but having the courage to do our small part, trusting that He would illuminate the next step. From that day on, my life became a treasure hunt for these little lights, and I began to find them everywhere, in places my former blindness prevented me from seeing. The light was in the kindness of the baker who wished me a good morning. It was in the phone call from a friend who called for no particular reason. It was in a passage from a book that seemed to have been written for me. It was in a moment of silence where I felt a peace that did not come from me. I learned that your help is not a single spectacular event. It is a succession of small, constant graces, and my task is to have the eyes of my heart open to perceive them, and the gratitude to welcome them. I am still in the well, Lord. The walls are still here. The way out is still far above. But I am no longer at the bottom. I am climbing, slowly, with my nails breaking, with my muscles aching. But I am climbing, and I no longer look at the height of the wall with despair. I look only at the next foothold, at the next ledge that your little light reveals to me. I live one step at a time, one light at a time, My faith was forged in this darkness, and it is much stronger than my old sunny day faith because it does not depend on favorable circumstances. It does not depend on positive feelings. It depends on only one thing, the certainty that even when I see nothing, you are at work, and at any moment you can send a light, and that this light will always be enough for the next step. My prayer today is that of a tired but determined climber. Thank you for the darkness, for it was in it that I learned to value the light. Thank you for the walls, for it was they that taught me to look up. Thank you for my weakness, for it was in it that I discovered your strength. And thank you for that first light, that message from a near stranger, which reminded me of the most important truth in the universe. I am not alone, and as long as I know that, I can keep climbing. Amen. If this touched your heart, share it with someone who might need a little light in their darkness today.